Hey guys, it's Deborah. I wanted to share something with you guys because I found it to be a blessing and encouraging, and we need that right now because the world is just in unprecedented times. And you look out your window and it's deserted, and it just seems really weird and just not normal at all. And sometimes, I feel like this is just overwhelming, or, it's just so saddening, or the situation that we're in, or whatever. Obviously, I know the truth and the hope that we look forward to, but still, we're living in this world right now. And this yesterday, I was feeling like that at a certain point, and then I got a text from my friend, and she was like, "Oh, isn't it interesting how millennials are called millennials when that is the term for the 1,000 year reign, the millennium reign?" She just said that like in passing. That isn't that interesting? And I'm sure the Lord laid that on her heart to share with me, because then it went into a spiral of amazing different revelations and things that I thought, wow, Lord, like you're really encouraging us in these last days to show us that we really are the last generation. So I have this thing on the screen, and I'm sure most of you know the different generations and how they're labeled. But if you haven't heard this before, basically each time, like chunks of time period, man-made generational titles have been produced where, you know, if you're born in these certain years, they call you this certain thing. So this is man-made, but I think God can use, well, I know God can use anything, to encourage us and talk to us. And maybe this might just seem like, oh, whatever to you, but to some people, like, it's not a big deal. But I think it's kind of necessary. It's like breadcrumbs to help us get through and show us that we really are the last generation. I think you really will be excited, and it'll be really interesting for you. So try to stick in to the end, because I will tie it all up to a really cool revelation. So let's just talk about these generations for a second. Okay, so you have the baby boomers, and they were those who were born after the war. That's why they call it baby boomers, because there was a big boom, this super cute picture of all these babies. There was like a boom in births because everybody was back from the war. So they were born like after 1945. Any of these, like I noticed when I was looking up dates for these different age groups and ranges, they do range slightly here and there. So some say 45, some say 46, but I say 45 because that's when the war ended, and that's when you're considered a baby boomer. Um, so yeah, anyway, so the baby boomers, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The baby boomers are like the first group that I felt the need to kind of start looking at. There was generations before that, but this is kind of where I was like kind of led to like look at and then going forward, and you'll see how it ties into this really cool thing at the end. So this generation, I believe, is the generation that shall not pass. Now, I'll go into that verse after, where Jesus said, he talked about, look at the parable, look at the fig tree, Israel, and this generation that sees the fig tree bloom and blossom, which we know is Israel coming back to life in 1948. This generation shall not pass away before they see the coming of the Son of Man. So that means, what does that mean? Those who were born after 1948, the baby boomers, they shall not pass away, fully die, that whole generation, before they see the second coming, not the rapture. So their generation. So we have to look at how old are they now, all this kind of stuff. So baby boomers are the first generation. Oh yeah, and I wanted to mention that I'd said in a previous video that a term going around the internet is that this virus that's going on is called the boomer remover. So these are baby boomers, and it's called the boomer remover, because what is it doing? It's taking out older people mostly, okay? And it's almost like the enemy is just trying to say, see, that prophecy is not going to come pass. Whatever it takes to make prophecy not come to pass. No, they're going to pass away. This generation shall not pass. Yes, they will. I'm going to make the boomer remover, or use the boomer remover, and disqualify that prophecy. That's just something that came to me one day because it's called the boomer remover. But let's move on. We'll tie it in the end. So Generation X would be the next after the boomer generation. This generation is very key, and I will tell you why shortly. Because whoever comes after the generation that shall not pass is extremely important. They're all important, but I'll explain to you how they fit in. First, I just want to go over each generation, and you see these people are born in like the 60s and 70s. And then you have the millennials generation. They also call it Generation Y. So that was X, this was Y. It says 1980 to year 2000. So yeah, I was actually born in this age range, so I guess that's where I'm at. I've seen other charts and they kind of vary within 2 years. So sometimes it goes to 82, sometimes it goes to 78. Like, so that's why the numbers at the end, it's a little bit, um, it's a little bit hard to show you where I'm going when it comes to how it all relates to timeline of end time biblical last generation stuff. It's a little bit hard because these are man-made and they're a little bit off, not always like I said 1946 or 1945. Depends on the boomer generation, but this is approximately 1980 to 2000, the millennials. And then you have Generation Z, which is basically my eldest daughter. She's 12. They are around that age, and the little girl at the end in the pink is kind of similar to how my daughter looks. So it's, yeah, around that age, tweens, that kind of thing going on. And then you have super cute Generation Alpha. So they're the little ones. My three youngest are all Generation Alpha. And yeah, they're going to be the newest ones. The little ones, they're the ones born after 2010. So what does this all mean and how does this all tie in? Well, it just takes twists and turns that I never thought it would. But let's just start with baby boomers for a second. One, I told you there's that fig tree prophecy that says, this generation shall not pass, that sees Israel become a nation, and they are that generation because 1948 and after is the generation that shall not pass away. Meaning, if we use the biblical term of a generation, it's 70 to 80 years if by strength. There's 120 years as well. And that is in, I believe, Genesis. It talks about a generation. But for the fig tree prophecy, for this video, for this sake of what I'm trying to explain, I'm going to use the generation being 70, 80 if by strength, which is approximate age that people do live right now. It's about 80 years old. So, okay, so here's how it all ties in. So the baby boomers, like I said, the boomer remover, which is this virus, that's a hint at the fact that either the enemy is using this or God is watching over this and giving us hints through it. So that's why I thought the generations and the terms do matter. So this generation shall not pass away. Now there's something very key that is pretty interesting, is there's a verse in Psalms that says, go tell the last generation about basically the temple being built and all this kind of stuff. Go tell the last generation. So if you look at Psalm 48:13, it says, mark you well her bulwarks, consider her palaces, that you may tell it to the generation following. Now, I'm going to slip some slides in, not going to go into them too much, but just going to slip them in to show you how these words aren't precisely translated exactly accurate. It's actually saying, instead of saying to the generation following, it says to the last generation. So this is so key, guys. We're literally being told in the Bible there's a last generation. And Psalm 48 is a picture. If you look at the Psalms and you look at them in accordance with events in history, Psalm 48 matches up what happened actually in 1948, which is the temple, not the temple, Israel coming back to life. The fig tree prophecy, yet again. Remember, they said, this generation that sees the fig tree bloom and blossom. Look, it was Psalm 48. Remember, 1948. It's God leaving breadcrumbs for us. He's saying, this generation shall not pass. So let me wrap this up again. The baby boomers would be the generation that shall not pass, but they are not considered the last generation. They're the generation that won't die before they see the second coming of the Lord, just time-wise. But it says in that verse, 1948, in that psalm, go and tell the last generation. Now, you can pause on different slides here that I'm showing that basically say that the words, the following generation, are not correctly translated. It's actually, and that's a whole thing, but it's actually the last generation. If you look deeply into the original words, the Hebrew words or Greek words. Now, my friend did all that research. She's the one who kind of looked it all up for me. I totally trust her research. And I do that myself. She didn't even just use Strong's. She actually also used the lexicon. I believe it's Greek lexicon and Hebrew lexicon. Different sources to make sure what it said. Anyway, so basically the things that I wanted to show you that I thought were really cool were, well, there's a couple things. So first, when you think of the word alpha, the alpha generation, they would be alpha, like, God says, I am the alpha and omega. So alpha is the beginning. Think about, so the 5 generations I talked about. So there's boomer, there's X, there's Y, which is millennial, there's Z, and then there's alpha. Now at Z would it be the end. Z or Z is the end of the alphabet. Okay, so that ends the last generation. Alpha, and I'll explain what I mean by this. Alpha would be the beginning, like a new beginning. This is all stuff that just came to me. It was like all at once. Okay, so let's look at it this way. If the baby boomers are the last generation spoken of in Matthew 24, where he said, this is the parable of fig tree. Look at the fig tree as it blooms, like when it blooms. And I'm not even going to go into the whole fig tree prophecy. Sorry, that's like a whole deep thing. So sometimes when I do these videos, I'm having people come in who are just learning about these end time things. Then I have people who have researched them forever. So it's a big, like vast type of group. Most people kind of do know these things about the fig tree prophecy and everything. So I won't go into all that. If you are interested in what that prophecy is, I do videos on it. If you just Google fig tree prophecy, there's all that. But the point is that interpretation it's an interpretation that we're basically saying when Jesus is giving this parable, he's saying those who see Israel become a nation that last time, because he talked about the temple was going to be destroyed, that no stone would be left. And that did happen in 70 AD. Then he also said that it would come back to life. And those who see it come back to life, they will not pass away. Remember, that's the boomer generation, those born after 1948. Okay. But then if you look at Psalms 48, it says, go tell the last generation. So it's saying basically those who see, this is an interpretation that it could be saying that those who see Israel come back to life, so the boomers, they are the ones who see Israel come back to life. They should tell the last generation. Who would be the last generation? It wouldn't be the boomers, even though they don't die. It says they shall not pass. They're not going to have the boomer remover. They're going to not pass. They are to go tell, Psalm 48, the last generation. So the last generation would be Generation X, Y, and Z, or Z, however you guys say it. And so let's look at it this way. If people like me are in the last generation, who can we tell? We can tell up until, at this point, say the rapture and the tribulation begin this year. We can tell up until Generation Z, because they are old enough to understand. They're of an age of understanding. My daughter, who's 12, she can fully understand this, okay? My other 3 little ones, my son can understand because he's mature, but my other 3 little ones, and he's on the verge, actually. Remember I said some of the generations like overlap. So it starts in 2010 is alpha. That is the new beginnings. That's the babies, okay? They can't understand. You can't tell a 7-year-old, oh, listen to all these, end time prophecies, you could tell them, but most, they have a general childlike understanding. But my point is, he's 2010, and so he's on the verge of understanding and stuff like that, but my eldest completely understands. So I hope I'm explaining this right, or well. I know I'm explaining it the way I'm supposed to. It's just, it's hard to, I want to make sure you guys understand. Okay, and then there's going to be more to this. Remember, this is all just like yesterday through a texting conversation, and one by one, these pieces were just falling into place as I'm like preparing my kids to go out for a walk. So, okay, so what do we have? We have the generation that shall not pass, the baby boomers. They're to go tell the last generation. That's why it's so key, because it didn't say just go tell the following generation. It said go tell the last generation. So the last generation, remember, the way they're categorizing these generations are like in 15 year blocks. That's not a real generation, So the last generation would be, again, like another 50, 70 years kind of thing. That's a whole real generation. So a generation biblically, I know 70 to 80. Just what I'm trying to say is the boomer generation is to tell the last generation. So people after them. That would be, like I said, Gen X, Y, Z. And think the end of the alphabet, the end of, the English alphabet or whatever is Z. It's the end, okay? So what if he's just giving us these hints? So what if they are the last generation who could fully understand what the baby boomers are to explain that the Lord is coming. Tell the last generation that I am coming. That's it. So Alpha, they're the ones who are too little to understand. Now think about it. Alpha means the beginning. So it would make total sense that they are the ones in the millennial. Like, even though Gen Y, so another name for them, is millennials, Alpha would be the ones who are actually the ones born in the tribulation. They're, not to say children are going to not be raptured, they are, but through the tribulation, you have still the ability to procreate. I don't want that to be the truth. I mean, people can procreate because it does say, that women who are with child, pray you're not with child when you're fleeing in mid-trib from the Antichrist, that you're not giving suck to child, basically nursing a child in those days. So the point is, people will still obviously be able to get pregnant during those days. That's the Alpha generation. So when we return the second coming, who's going to be left on the earth? There's going to be the Alpha generation will be there. There'll be little kids and babies and things like that. And they are going to go forward throughout the millennial reign. And the Alpha generation that will be raptured, they will also be in the millennial reign. Those left on earth are the Alpha generation. They will be the ones starting up, beginning the 1,000-year reign. They're the ones we will rule and reign over. Remember, there'll be people on the earth for us to rule and reign over. He will destroy all the evil people, but there will be people that will be ruling and starting the millennial reign. Those are the ones. After making this video, I re-looked over, this is like the next day, I re-looked over or listened to the video, and I just thought of something. Think about going into the promised land. It was the young generation. I think it was like 19 and under. They entered the promised land. So the Alpha generation will be around that age and younger. They are going to be the ones who are stepping into the promised land, because all those older, most of them will have sided with the Antichrist and will be destroyed. So it's very similar to when the Jews actually went into the promised land, that age, this Alpha group. Just something I thought of after I edited the video. Right now that are, 3 years old, they're going to be the ones who are going to be the ones who survive the tribulation, will be the ones when we come in the second coming. They will be the ones who are living for 1,000, like that are starting the 1,000 years. They're going to be humans. They're not going to have a glorified body. So what I'm trying to say is, through all of this, it was just like he was just showing me, I feel like these terms really meant something, that the baby boomers were the ones who were not going to pass before the second coming. That generation X, Y, Z, generation X, Y, millennials, whatever, and Z are the last generation. They're the last that can fully understand. And and Z ends. Think, it's the end. It's over. They're the last generation. Then generation Alpha, they're the beginning. They're the ones who are going to, and this just encourages you for timeline sake. And again, you could be like, well, these are man-made terms. He can use these things, because for me to just like randomly put these pieces together, it's just not, it makes no sense. Okay. So I don't know. I think it's just symbolic. I think it's symbolic of, okay, we're leaving one dispensation, the dispensation of grace, and then the tribulation's over, and then the new millennial reign. That's a whole new, whatever you want to call it, a whole new, time frame. So there's an end, Generation Z, and then a beginning, Generation Alpha. It gives you, to me, it gives timeline to know we are seeing things correctly. We are, because some people are like, oh, well, we have way more time because, 120 years from 1948 is 2068, things like that. It's funny, that thought popped into my head recently, and I just got a comment on it. And that would really erase the Malachi prophecies. It would erase like so much prophecy and so many things. So that'd be hard to just do, to say that. But this to me reassures that no, that's not the case, because like I said, I feel like he showed me that the Alpha generation is the new life that's going to spring forth during the millennial reign, the new human life. Okay, so that's something. And then, okay, now to end it off, this is something cool. Okay, so as I was thinking about it, I was like, I have that Rapture code countdown in Strong's where it's like 555 444 333 222 111. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you can Google Rapture code countdown. I say this so many times in Strong's. It's what's called Rapture code countdown, I think, in Strong's. It's one of my videos. But basically, the Lord showed me this countdown, and it just made a sentence to talk about when we were leaving and stuff like that. So, or not when, but that we are leaving. So here's the point is, think about it. That's, again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's 5 generations I talked about. Boomers, X, Y, Z, and Alpha. Wait, boomers, X, Y, Z, and alpha. That's right. Okay. So here's what I realized. It was like out of nowhere. So I was like, they're all approximately about 14 years apart. I don't know why that number came to me. I read, because here's the thing is when you go online, like I said, it varies. This is man-made. It will be like, oh, boomers start from here and end here, and oh, and Gen X starts here and Y starts here. It varies. Even alpha varies a little bit. But I noticed that there was a trend to around 14 years. So I just randomly did 14 times 5. So those 5 generations, and it equaled 70. So isn't that totally amazing? I just thought, oh, let me just know, 14 on average is the years that they're counting. And it comes up. So basically from the time that they said this, Jesus said, you're the ones who are going to see Israel become a nation, from the boomers beginning to when all of this is supposed to end. If you did 14-year generations, it would turn into 70 years, which fits perfectly. Then what I did was I thought, okay, well, what's the first year they talk about here with this boomer, Gen X, Y, blah, 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 all this stuff. So they talk about 1945. Okay, 1945 is the first year that I have seen. Like I said, it ranges from 45 to 46 or whatever when they start their count. And there are generations they've talked about beforehand, but it's not something that I even thought to look up. So that's why I kind of go on this, because I felt like maybe this is just breadcrumbs to help us to see you are on the right track. Sometimes you falter and think, wait, what if I got this all wrong? And then these things will just come to me. So I don't know. Anyway, I thought it's encouraging. So 1945 would be the first year, and then 2025 would be the last year of that they talk about Generation Alpha. So many different resources that I found said 2010 to 2025. Again, that's 15 years. Some say 14, some say 15, depend on the generation. But if you do 1945 to 2025, that's 80. So that's 80 years. So no matter how I was cutting it up and doing it, it was like giving me these amazing numbers, because it says a generation is 70, 80 by strength. I know there's the 120 generation count, and I feel like that has been fulfilled in another way. That's a whole nother long talk when the 120 is fulfilled simultaneously with the 70, 80. It's like everything gets fulfilled together. So that's so God, multi-layered, right? That the 120 can be fulfilled at the same time as the 70, 80. And that's a whole nother talk. But let's just focus on the 70 and 80. That just, worked out for me. It just worked out, that calculation that I told you, that 14 years times the 5 generations gives you 70. Or if you just count 1945 to 2025, the end of Alpha, it gives you 80. So I feel like it was clues. That was amazing when I did that math. I was like, wow, okay, just wow. And I was literally, I said, trying to get kids ready to go for a walk and just running around the house as I'm texting my friend. And it's like thing after thing is just coming to my brain, and I'm texting my friend back and forth. I'm like, hey, guess what? Listen to this, listen to that. And she's like, oh my gosh. And, just from her one innocent text saying, isn't it interesting that millennials are called millennials? And why on earth would all of that just come into my brain, So I think, like I said, it's just a nugget for us, a breadcrumb, something to keep hope alive, to say, this is the last generation. So remember, I said the boomers are the generation that shall not pass. The last generation would be X, Y, Z, Z ending it all, the end. And then generation of all names for them to choose is Alpha, the beginning. Those are the ones, the young ones, who are going to start the millennial reign. Jesus and will come and destroy with the breath of his mouth, like with fire, all the evil when he comes back. At the end of Armageddon, he comes back to destroy all evil, and we're behind him, and it's gone. All the evil people and everything, but all the little ones are going to be left, and they're going to grow in a natural way throughout the 1,000 years. Going to start then, cultivating the earth and starting earth again, with us ruling and reigning, and in our glorified bodies, and then they will naturally pass away, and then there'll be more people, but they were the Alpha generation for the millennial. Do I know if this is for sure? Of course not. This is just so random. And it gave me and my friend a little investigative fire. We like to investigate things. It's fun. And then, I like to share things. So this was really exciting. And we were able to, she was able to dig into the ancient writings. And so you can, trust what I'm saying in the way that we've done the research. I mean, you can yourself, of course, but sometimes different versions say things. It's not exactly correct. And now we're in a day and age where the Lord is letting us go deeper because we have the internet access and things like that. We can understand different languages and everything a little bit better. So like I said, the boomers are the generation that shall not pass. X, Y, Z are the last generation. That should give you hope. That's it. They're the last generation. And then Alpha, they're the beginning to start off our new reigning positions in this world and the new life on this earth. But first we get to, see heaven, the Father's house. That he, Jesus said, in my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. So where I am, you will come also. You're going to go to the Father's house. He's going there. So that's where we're going to go. So that's why a post-tribulation situation can't work. How do we see the Father's house? He said, he promised us that we'll go see it, that he prepared a place so we can go see it. So, that's a big part of our excitement. But then on top of that, there's this 1,000 years, on earth, and then eternity after that. But yes, one step at a time. So anyway, I thought that was encouraging and I hope it blessed you guys. I will talk to you guys hopefully again soon, or even more hopefully see you in the air. And until next time, God bless and shalom.